Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Glad everyone can make it tonight. And good to see many folks that we know, and look forward to speaking with the rest of you and getting to know you. My name is Dan Polly, Planning Manager with the city. And I'm going to take off my mask. I can do that where I'm at. So again, Dan Polly, Planning Manager. I'll be the project manager for the city for this master planning project. And so wanted to start. I think we have enough people here, so we'll go ahead and get started. I am going to go through, and we have a small enough group. We'll promote everyone to panelists in Zoom. So we'll all be in a group and can see each other's faces and talk. So it'll be just a moment while we do that, and then we'll do some introductions. So give me just a moment here. So you'll see a note to rejoin if you're not familiar with this feature. And if you prefer to remain an attendee, that's fine. I can just allow you to talk when it's your turn for introductions. So for introductions, I just want to know your name. And here's some information you may choose to share if you'd like. So where you live in the Frog Pond area, how long maybe you've lived there, and one fun fact about your property or the area that you'd like to share. But first, I'd like to allow the project team that's here tonight to introduce themselves, starting with Georgia and then Joe Dills.
Hi, I am Georgia McAllister. I'm the assistant planner with the city of Wilsonville. And on this project, I'll be doing a lot of the work with the public outreach. So I hope to get to know you all really well in this process.
Hi, Dan. I'm trying to start my video. This is Joe Dills. Again, I'm getting a message that I can't start it. So I'll just say hello until that happens. Hi, everybody. My name is Joe Dills. I'm one of the consultants. I work for a company called Angelo Planning Group. I'm the project manager for the consultants. And I was involved in the area plan before, and happy to be back working in Wilsonville as always, and look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you. Then Andrew, and then Mariana.
Hello, I'm having the same video issue. So I think it's just a everybody thing at this point. I also work for Angelo Planning Group with Joe Dills, and I was also involved in the Frog Pond area plan and the Frog Pond West master plan. Happy to be here tonight.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, I'm unable to start my video as well. This is Mariana Valenzuela. I work for Centro Cultural, and we do community engagement events and projects for different causes. And I'm really happy to be with you all tonight.
Okay, give me just a moment, see if I can adjust a setting to make sure everyone can go ahead and share their video. Give me just a moment. Hadn't run into that setting before. I don't see an option. I apologize. I don't see an option to change that without kicking everyone out. And let me see. I will, at least for the team, I think if I make you co-host, then everyone can see. For those that will be speaking, we'll go ahead and you guys should be able to unmute your video now so everyone can see your faces. For the rest of the participants, just send me a message if you really want people to see your faces. Otherwise, we'll let you leave your video off. And I apologize that somehow that setting got on and not able to change it now without restarting the webinar. So, so with that, let me bring up our list of participants. And if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and as much as you want, let's start with top of my list is Tim and Cynthia Perez.
Hi, we are in Frog Pond South, I think is what you call it. We've been here for about 25 years. So this will be quite a change to go through this process.
Thanks, Cynthia. And anything unique you or Tim would like to share about the property?
Well, the one thing that we liked about it was it's close into town, but it's still rural. So we have the benefits of both.
And I'll allow Tim to talk. He hasn't joined as a panelist yet. Tim, did you have anything to add?
You know what? I think she said it all.
Okay, thanks. Next, let's go to Joseph Azar.
Hi, I'm Joseph Azar, and I'm here with my father, Khalil Azar. And we own a portion of the property there in Frog Pond Northeast. And that's about 80 acres. We've been owners since 1980. So we've had that property for some time. We're interested in seeing what the development plans are for the city.
Thank you, Joseph. And let's go Sparkle Anderson and then Michelle.
Okay, am I unmuted yet?
Yeah, yes, you are, Sparkle.
Okay, I own the property just north of where the Frog Pond Grange is, that northeast, and it's a homestead of my family, and I've been wanting to ask somebody at the city if they're aware of the artesian water and springs that bubble up underneath the houses and everywhere else in the place, and is there going to be water bubbling up into the houses like it used to bubble up in Buss's barn? And I've never gotten an answer because I haven't talked to an engineer yet, but I'd be curious to know that.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, we'll make note of that and make sure we have a discussion about that as we look into this in more detail. All right, and Michelle?
Hi, my name's Michelle Owens. I live here in Frog Pond South with my husband and son, and we've been just trying to figure out timing on what's going on and what we're going to end up doing with our property. Our house is decent, but if a developer comes through, it's a tear down. So we're in this weird limbo where we don't know if we want to make improvements or if we're just going to sell or what the plan is and when. So that's kind of where I'm at. And just as a side note, Joe Dills, I used to work with you at OTAC about a decade or so ago. So hi, Joe.
Hi, Michelle.
All right, great. Then the free guards, MJ and Kent.
So I think I'm unmuted. This is Meredith. I also go by MJ. It's a nickname. We have been living here in the Frog Pond South on 60th for 28 years. One fun fact is we had our kids in 4-H and raised pigs and had, I don't know, 3 litters of piglets over the years, and lots of fun with the kids on the property.
Great. I appreciate that. Right, I'm seeing, I think we've hit everyone. Actually, Wendy, do you want to introduce yourself? Or is that you, Sam?
Yeah, hi. This is Sam and Wendy. We are on 60th. We also just want to see what is, hi, Dan, by the way.
Hi.
I'm your old neighbor. Haven't seen you in a while. You look great.
Hi, Dan.
Wendy says hi.
That's Logan.
That's Logan as well. Yeah, we just want to see what's in the future and what, is planned and what is going to be happening.
And this is our forever home. So
Yeah, so it's gonna mean a lot to us to see what's gonna happen.
Understood. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone? I think I got everyone. Either raise your hand or unmute yourself and speak up if I haven't caught you. I did want to allow Miranda Bateshell, Planning Director, who's joined us, to introduce herself.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dan. I was trying to undo my video just so that people could see my face, but I'm not sure if I can. So that's why it took me a while, but I just wanted to say welcome and thank you all for coming and participating this evening. We're looking forward to this project and being able to hear from everyone in the community about this area, but obviously specifically many of you who live here and have been here for a long time. So thank you, and look forward to meeting you in person, hopefully at some point over the next year, for those of you that I have not already met before. So have fun tonight. Tell us everything that you want us to know. We look forward to hearing from you.
Okay, thank you. So tonight, what we want to do is provide an overview of the project. I've heard a lot of interest from this group of what's going to happen and the timeline it's going to happen. Set the stage for opportunities for future participation, kind of explain what opportunities there will be over the timeline of this project. And also too, we've heard altogether there's a lot of knowledge and a lot of time on this property on this call tonight. So we really want to learn from you and continue to engage you. So as we work with the future of these properties. So now I'll go ahead and turn it over to Joe from Angelo Planning.
So we can keep this kind of interactive. And what we want to do is let you know that specific questions you have, you can put into the Q&A feature, and then they're written down and we can see them as we go and try and address them. So the prompt to you is, what questions would you like addressed during this meeting? And recognize that there is a 15-month plus process ahead of us. But anything that's on your mind that you'd like addressed, put that in the Q&A feature. You can type it in, or just simply raise your hand and we'll recognize you and you can say it. Or if you think of something later, just send an email, and we'll tell you those email addresses as we go along. So send us those questions and we'll see what we can cover tonight or after tonight.
I'll go ahead and stop sharing if anyone wants to raise their hand and ask a question at this point.
And while you're doing that, I took note that people are interested in sort of the timeline for planning and maybe future development. And folks are interested in, of course, what will be on the plans themselves that will emerge over time. And what about that artesian water? Okay, well, if you think of things as we go, by all means, just type it in. And oh, we have one from Michelle. Go ahead, Michelle.
Sorry, I had to have my son show me how to raise my hand on Zoom. So got over that barrier. My main question is that I see in the flyer that was sent out that there's a real concern for having affordable housing in this area. And seeing the developments that have sprung up and the crazy amount they have appreciated within even the last year, how is that going to get reconciled? Especially on my side, on the south side, there's a lot of people here subdividing bigger acreages and building like $1 million homes, or people who've already bought, smaller homes, demolished, and then built $1 million plus homes. How does that work in with a master plan that's supposed to be for affordable housing?
Mm-hmm. Great question. Yeah, we can answer that as we go along, and actually it'll be something we're studying in the months ahead, but great question. Any others up front that we can just put on our list and make sure we cover? Okay. Oh, MJ, go ahead.
Well, you mentioned that this is a 15-month process, and I'm just wondering what is going to happen in that 15 months.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. We'll go through the basic timeline of the project. Joseph, go ahead.
Yeah, as you know, we've been approached by several contractors to purchase the land. We narrowed it down to 2, West Hills and Polish Homes. And I just want to know the relationship the city has with those 2 developers. I'm sure you've dealt with them before. I asked that question before. You probably, we just like to have a little feedback, the relationship between the city and the developers, as one of them possibly going to participate in the master plan.
Great. Yeah, they are well known to the city. I can tell you that much up front, and we'll cover that as we go along. Any others that we should be sure to address as we walk through the presentation? Okay, Dan, I think we can keep cruising ahead, and we'll just collectively look for the right times to answer the 3 questions that have come in so far.
Agreed. Okay. So next, wanted to talk through really what is, when we say a master plan, what really are we talking about? What are we looking at? And we're looking at this area from a lot of different angles. It's certainly more than just like deciding how many houses go where or something like that. So we are looking at where's some commercial versus where's residential, where's different types of residential. We're also doing a lot of effort to really look at the street network, where trails and future transit stations may be, the parks and open space, preserving existing trees and being strategic of how we incorporate those into a new neighborhood. That's all a big part of it. The area plan certainly talks about preservation of the Grange, and we plan on continuing to look at that and how to best see how that Grange changes over time and is part of this community. as it changes. So part of master planning is also a very technical part about how you pay for it, especially all the infrastructure, the roads and pipes and landscaping is not cheap. And so how to pay for that is an important part as it affects pricing of housing and so many other things. And also just the overall community design, kind of the look and feel that's envisioned for the area. So there's a lot of components, and we've broken it down, and you'll see these different components come out over these coming months as we work on this. And with that, I want to hand it over to Georgia, talk about broadly what is, how can you participate in over these next 15 or so months. So go ahead, Georgia.
Thanks, Dan. So there's going to be a lot of different opportunities for everyone to participate. This is a highly collaborative process that we're going to be doing. Well, this is our first meeting with the community, and we're going to have more coming up throughout these 15 months process. And the best way to check in on when the meetings are and how to get signed up for them will be Let's Talk Wilsonville. So if you haven't visited that site yet, it's a site that we use for a lot of different projects, and there's a whole page focused on the Frog Pond East and South Master Plan. On that site, you can opt into our email list. You can also check in on our project updates. There'll be lots of information there as we move through the process. Right now, there's a great FAQ up there just to get you introduced to the topics. On that website as well will be the contact information for both Dan and I. If you have direct questions you need to ask of us and you want to give us a call or send us an email, you can do it that way. Another great way to keep track of what we're going to be doing will be attending the public meetings, not just the community meetings, but the Planning Commission meetings. Our first one's coming up in October on the 13th. So that will be at 6 p.m. and everyone's welcome to join that virtually. And then you can contact Dan or I. You can also contact anyone at the city. You can just call up the main line and they'll be able to direct you to us. Anyone from the planning department will be able to really easily connect you with us. So those are just some of the few options where you can be able to participate and keep up with what's going on. It looks like Wendy has a question.
Go ahead, Sam or Wendy.
I'm still learning about Zoom myself.
Yeah.
So one of my concerns would be, we have an acre and I don't want to feel like we're being pushed out. Like, I don't know if you've all seen the cute cartoon Up. I don't want to feel like that. That's kind of, this is kind of, like I said, our forever home. And, I'm all about growth, but not growth to where it's like, all these apartments or something like that. And, that's not why we moved out here, to be placed in that kind of environment. I don't know, that's a big concern to us. We just don't want to feel like, traffic. Yeah, traffic. We already have bad traffic. That's a concern. My kids, like to bike ride and walk, and already it's a huge concern because people come down Advance Road flying. So, speeding and just, there's a lot of concerns, but yeah, my main thing is I just don't want to feel pushed out. I don't know.
That's a really valid feeling, and I appreciate you sharing that with us. And we'll address some of those concerns as we go through this meeting and the process.
Yeah, and the conversation will continue over these coming months and how that plays out. So thank you for sharing, Wendy.
Thank you.
All right, the one thing I'd add on Let's Talk as well is that's where, as we progress, when we have surveys or trying to gather information and input that way, that page will also feature those surveys. So, and if you don't have it jotted down yet, here's Georgia and my contact information.
One more note, kind of the obvious thing on Let's Talk Wilsonville, you can like literally just type those words into your browser and it'll take you to the page. And it's very, very easy to see where the information on Frog Pond is located. And these contacts are also located there too. So don't feel like you need to write them down really quickly.
There's also, in addition to just information about this project, there's some information on what we are trying to do with affordable housing. So you can get the link to the strategic housing plan or affordable housing plan, as well as the original Frog Pond area plan. So there's some great content to get you the background knowledge as we move forward with this as well.
Wendy, did you have another question or is your hand up from before?
I think it was up from before. Sorry.
No, no worries. No,
So
no
weird.
worries.
I'll unhand. Oh, there we go. Perfect.
There.
Takes
yeah.
a bit to get used to.
All right, let's keep rolling.
So one part that just want to be clear on, I think most of you are familiar. I mean, you live here. A lot of you have been around a long time, understand kind of we're involved or followed the process of when we planned the West neighborhood. So you understand where that is. So really, as we talk through this, the idea that Frog Pond, when we adopted the area plan about 6 years ago, there were 3 neighborhoods. There's the West neighborhood, which is where construction is ongoing now on the west side of Stafford Road. The East neighborhood is for the purpose of our discussions, we're considering north of Advance Road and east of Stafford. And then the area around Meridian Creek, south of Advance Road, is considered the South neighborhood. So and just in this map, as you overlaid on the aerial photo, the area that doesn't have the kind of the white mask is an area that is actually within the boundary that we're looking at, which is an area that was added to the urban growth boundary by the regional government in 2018. So part of the impetus is to plan that area that was added to the urban growth boundary. Which, for those that may not be as familiar, that's really a boundary drawn by the regional government of where urban level development can occur. So why this plan? Why we're doing it now? Wilsonville really prides itself on creating great places. We've done a lot of master planning, going back, to Charbonneau, more recently to Villebois, and a lot of other smaller ones, Frog Pond West. So, and we've seen those pay dividends in creating some great neighborhoods. And so being thoughtful about how development happens and having a great neighborhood starts with a great plan, and really helping the community be thoughtful about the regulations and the guidance we give developers as change happens out there. We are certainly, part of this is both from a local desire as well as some regulations from Metro. There's looking at affordable housing choices. There's specific parts of the project where we're looking at opportunities and asking those questions of, how can more opportunities for more affordable housing choices come into this neighborhood where the market, left as it is now, has been tended to provide some higher end options. So really that's part of what we're looking at, and there'll be some significant community conversation on those topics over the coming months. So as I mentioned, it was added to the urban growth boundary, as I explained, and before it can be annexed into the city and development can occur, this is the next step. And so once this is adopted in late 2022, then it's really being able to provide utilities is the next step and development can start happening. For example, when we adopted it in Frog Pond West or in Villebois, development started happening pretty quickly. Again, though, infrastructure, the pipes and the roads are a big part of this. So certain parts can't develop until the infrastructure gets there. So that's important to keep in mind. So there is that technical, how we get the roads and the pipes to the different parts of the neighborhood, as well as what type of development is desired in the different parts of the neighborhoods. I do want to acknowledge Metro as part of the role as regional government is around this land use, especially in expanding where development can happen. And so there is funding from Metro that supports this project.
I see we have a hand up from Michelle. Let's pause for a moment. Michelle, what is your question or your comment?
A few things. I share the concern I think other people have touched on about density, because when I hear the words affordable housing, it sounds like high density to me. And, you know, being spoiled by being on over an acre and having 2 neighbors and that's it, that's scary really for us. So that's just my comment. The question I have is, once the plan is adopted, at what point do they rezone this area? We're currently exclusive farm use, and that affects our property taxes. So how does that work? Do people get grandfathered in if they still stay here? At some point, I'm assuming we're going to have to get hooked up. I mean, all of this is new to me, and I don't really know who to ask these questions to. So I'm hoping some of these you can help me with. But I mean, we're on a well, we're on a septic with an easement out to a sand filter in the back 40 behind us. And all of these things that play into like taxes and hookups and all of these things, just they sound very expensive, which is part of the reason we're hemming and hawing on, do we want to live through this process or do we just want to sell off? So I guess that was kind of a long question, sorry, but that's where my brain is at as I listen to you speak. So thank you.
Dan, we've been building a list of things to cover, but I think this is a good time to answer this one directly.
Yeah, I'd agree, Joe. Yeah.
Yeah. So why don't I start with a few words here, Dan, and then you as the local expert can fill in. The short answer to your question, Michelle, about when does zoning happen? When does new zoning happen? It's different from the county zoning you have today. The city's process it has used in Frog Pond West is that occurs when the property annexes, and then when a land use plan, a development plan goes through the review process. So the zoning is applied when the property annexes into the city. And the other part of that is that the city's practice to date has been that is the property owner's choice. So owners decide when to apply for annexation. And then, of course, a development plan is when new zoning is considered and applied. So Dan, I hope I got the fundamentals right. Go ahead and correct me if there's something to add to that, and fill in more about that answer.
Sure, Joe, you've been around Wilsonville long enough. You get it pretty well. So typically it is, and we anticipate it here. We haven't really talked that there's another alternative. I mean, technically, I guess we could take a different approach here if there's a compelling reason. But historically, Wilsonville's always done the annexation and all the zoning at the same time that really development's being proposed. It is usually not you wouldn't be coming in, but that'd be something that a developer that bought a property would be doing. So we don't annex or rezone it, changing your current status until you elect to, and typically you're doing that with the developer that you're selling the property to.
And I'll add one more little bit, is that what this master plan does is tell you in advance what that zoning will be when you choose to make that change, or when you choose to sell to a developer that would go ahead and do it. So everybody has certainty around what types of land uses will be where, and the fundamentals about infrastructure and infrastructure cost. Wendy, your hand has come up while we've been talking. Something on this topic, or is it another comment?
Hello. I love what Michelle was saying. So it is on the same comment she had, or question, I'm sorry. So I've been wondering this for a long time since all this has come up with the rural development. So we keep our property very green and organic. We like our lawn, and we've put a lot of, trees and whatnot. So how would this work with us being on a well? Will we be forced to go sewer? Can we do part sewer, part keeping our well? How does this all play out? Because if we're forced to go on to sewer, our property would be awful. Because our water is amazing. We are on the artist. Our water is perfect. I just don't want to have to get off our well or be forced off our well. I don't know.
So Wendy, we don't have an expert on that. I can talk generally about it, but in terms of the exact kind of triggers that would cause a connection, generally speaking, you're not going to connect to city services until development changes. There are certain circumstances that are technical, and I don't know the details, that if like you have a failed septic or a failed well and you're within a certain distance, that sometimes it'll trigger it if it's available. If it's like already, all the utilities are already down 60th, then there may be a circumstance there, but generally it's not something that you have to do just because utilities are put into 60th.
Okay, kind of an ouch for me, because if we work, because we're the road next to the city, if we were forced to do the city, I already know how the city water works. It was our most expensive bill when we lived in the city. So
yeah, but again, that's not likely, Wendy.
Okay.
Yeah, and yeah.
All right, that'd be a game changer. That's our biggest game changer. Okay. That would be for us. So, all right, thank you. I appreciate it.
I would just note, this is Miranda, the planning director. I would just note briefly that it's our code not to connect folks to city services without annexation, which connects back to what Joe and Dan were saying about annexation to the city is connected to the rezoning, which is connected to a development plan. And so typically we don't, like, our code actually says we're not supposed to have folks outside the city who are not annexed to the city connecting to city services. So it really is only in the most, I guess, unusual circumstances that it would not be that way.
Thank you, Miranda.
Let's keep rolling.
Okay. So Andrew, did you want to take this one?
Yeah, this is Andrew Parrish again with APG. Just I wanted to give you a little update or maybe a little bit of background on the planning that has been done for these areas to date. So way back in about 2015, I guess it was adopted in 2015, so it was 2014, 2015. The Frog Pond area plan, as it's known, was drafted by the city, and it went through a pretty robust public engagement process, much like the one that we're going to go through for this effort. And as Dan kind of mentioned earlier, at that time, the west neighborhood was within the city of Wilsonville, within the urban growth boundary, and was looking to be annexed into the city of Wilsonville. And then these east and south neighborhoods were outside, but they were identified by Metro, the regional government, as what they call urban reserves. So we put these three neighborhoods together as part of a cohesive plan. How do we have a street network that connects between the neighborhoods, so you don't necessarily have to get on the main roads if you're coming to and from the school or the park. And how do we get good pedestrian connectivity, bicycle connectivity? How do we get land uses that fit well together, and the types of kind of housing that go well together as well? We looked at natural resources. So the Beckman Creek kind of corridor and trail was a big part of that effort, and how the West neighborhood is intentionally designed to kind of bring people to that trailhead. And so I guess if we go to the next slide here, there was the area plan, which included all 3 neighborhoods, and then there was the West area master plan, the Frog Pond West master plan, which was a more detailed and specific effort that looked at where are the neighborhood streets actually going to be, what are the actual number of housing units that we're going to allow in a lot of these residential sub-districts, and we even got down to what does the kind of wall on the street need to look like along Beckman Road. So a lot of very more fine-grained design aspects in the master plan as opposed to the higher level area plan. And this was adopted shortly after the area plan in, I think, 2016. So at that time, I guess the city has learned a bit about how Frog Pond West has been developing. There's been a lot going on at the city in terms of citywide housing kind of need and equity conversations, and kind of the focus of land use planning kind of in the state as a whole. So the East and South master plans are going to be taking the best kind of lessons that we learned in the Frog Pond area plan and the Frog Pond West master plan, and applying them to the newly added areas to the urban growth boundary. And both of these plans, I think, are, if you're not dialed into what they say already, I think they'd be really helpful for you to be thinking about as you continue to participate with us here.
Okay, so we've done this previous planning. We thought it would be helpful to everybody to talk about sort of what will be the same as or similar to the detail that was put into Frog Pond West, and then what might be different for this effort. So here's the list of what we think is the same. The basic neighborhood structure, that we have a neighborhood area that is north of Advance Road, and if you're standing in the middle of it, it's really like just a 5-ish minute walk from there to the edge. So it's a very cohesive kind of area. And then you've got the neighborhood structure south of Advance Road, which has about the same dimension, and of course has the school and has a future community park and so on. So looking at this as 2 neighborhoods that are part of a larger community is the same. We should note the lands that are located outside the urban growth boundary. So north of Cayley Road, is it called? I need an education on how to pronounce Cayley Road, but north of Cayley Road is rural. To the west, to the east of the project area is rural, and to the south is also rural. What that means is that Metro has not looked at those lands as being for future urbanization, that the urban growth boundary areas are within this project area, or there's additional future urban areas that are on the west side of Stafford Road. So the street network and the utility alignments that we prepared with the community's input during the area plan, we think those are pretty close to what they'll likely be, because they're frankly not too complicated. They were a very natural connecting of Frog Pond Lane over to 60th and a few other connections that you'll see on the plans as you start to study them. We may hear some ideas and identify some ideas for some updates, and that's what this process is about. but the fundamental street network may look similar to what we've drawn to date. And the water and sewer lines, and for the most part, stormwater flow as well, basically follows the streets, and we'll be updating that work, looking to make sure that it's serving the land uses that are planned, but those also could be pretty similar. Adjacent to the project area is the 10-acre property that is at the southwest corner of 60th and Advance Road. That has been designated for a community park, and they will be a community park in the future. It's adjacent to the project area, but we thought it useful to mention that. The fact that the area will be mostly residential uses is fundamentally the same. There was the idea for a small neighborhood commercial center, someplace where you might be able to go to a coffee shop or go to a small restaurant, or maybe even a small store that would be located somewhere along Stafford Road. We're going to restudy that question about whether that is a feasible use and something that is an advantageous part of the plan for the whole area. And then finally, the city's overall commitment and the kinds of code standards and so on that it has that talk about quality design and walkable neighborhoods and tree preservation. Those are all rules that are in place in Frog Pond West and throughout the city in various forms. And those will also be part of the mix that gets put into more detail into Frog Pond East and South. Okay, so that's the list of what's the same. What might be different? What are the new issues that we're exploring? And I think this is an opportunity to answer a few of the questions that have come up. And maybe a heads up to either Dan or Andrew. If you have the ability to pull up the timeline, we could answer the timeline question after I'm done talking here. So I'll check back in with you. So the first item on this list is that the city has what I would call something of a new or enhanced priority for equitable housing. That's the term that has been used by the city to look at housing that is planned to make sure it serves all of the community members in the city, and that there's a variety that is provided that matches various income levels of people that want to live in Wilsonville. And that will take the form of an affordable housing strategy for Frog Pond specifically. I wish I could tell you exactly right now what will be in that. Will it be apartments? Will it be townhomes? Will it be something else? Really, we're at the beginning of the process, so we don't know. If you followed the work in the past, there was a sort of a theme that emphasized more single-family detached housing and various forms of like townhomes and plexes and so on. Multifamily apartments have not really been part of the area planning to date, but we are at the beginning of the process. So we're going to have to define what we mean about affordable choices for Frog Pond as we go through this plan and this community conversation. There is an influence on that, and that is new state requirements and how they've been put into the Wilsonville Code for what's called middle housing. So middle housing is a fancy term for describing at one end you have apartments. That's not middle housing. At the other end of the spectrum, you have single family detached. In between, you have duplexes and townhomes and maybe a triplex and small cottage lots and so on. What's new from the state is that those now are a requirement that they must be allowed in all zones of the city, all zoning areas that also allow primarily single family housing. And so The city has gone through a very thoughtful process of how does that show up in the Wilsonville zoning code. We'll be looking at that for Frog Pond East and South. But suffice it to say that that range of middle housing that I described has to be allowed. It doesn't have to be built, but it does have to be allowed. And so we'll be exploring how to do that in these two neighborhood plans. Let's see. The exploration of new and additional infrastructure funding strategies. You have to pay for the streets, the water, the storm, the sewer, and the parks somehow. In Frog Pond West, there was sort of an innovative idea that was identified that in addition to the standard, what are called system development fees, there would be a special Frog Pond West infrastructure fee. And it was calibrated to build a portion of Beckman Road, a sewer line that needed to go in it, a park and a trailhead. There was a specific list of things that were important to the neighborhood development. And so that mechanism exists. And the city is interested in exploring whether there are new and even better ways to fund infrastructure so that people pay their proportional share. And there is guarantee, or certainty is a better word. There's certainty that as development occurs over time, the funds of the city grow to the point where you can put that infrastructure in when you need it. And Georgia also talked about the thoughtful outreach to a variety of groups. So there'll be lots of meetings and outreach to get everybody involved. Okay, so let's see what I touched on. So the question about, so how are we going to deal with affordable housing? Fundamentally, it's looking at this range of housing and what parts of the range do we want to plan for in Frog Pond. I did see a question come up in chat here or in the Q&A about, is there a required percentage of middle housing? Per the state rules, the answer is no. But the city can choose to have minimum proportions of housing types that may play into the answer there. So that's something we're going to have to answer as we go.
And I would add there, Joe, that so in terms of allowance on a property level, any lot that allows a single family house has to also allow middle housing. So in that sense, it's 100% as long as the lot is big enough for certain types of middle housing. But in terms of what's actually built, there's, I mean, we can address it differently, but it's not required to be built. It's about an allowance in terms of compliance with state law.
And I'll add to that one other thought is the compliance with state law and so on is what we've sometimes called the have to parts of this. There's also the want to part of it. The city is committed to providing more choices in housing. And the question is, well, what's the right way to do that in Frog Pond East and South? And like I say, we don't know the answer now, but it'll be an exploration. There's two questions on the list that we haven't gotten to yet. Let's take the one about relationships with West Hills and Polish Homes. I know I'm switching topics a little bit there, but Dan, why don't you talk about what the city knows about working with those two particular developers and what might be helpful to the question that was asked?
Sure. So, I mean, I can share West Hills and Polish, I believe are the specific ones you mentioned, are both developers that have been active in Frog Pond West that are quite familiar with the Frog Pond planning that's occurred, have been involved, and are actively pursuing more opportunities out here, and that we've worked with on a number of projects over the years.
And then timeline.
Yeah,
Is it possible to pull up a timeline graphic?
yeah, I have it up. Unless Andrew does, I can share.
Go for it. Go
I
for it,
think we
Dan.
both do. So why don't you go for it, Dan?
Okay. Find the right window here. Okay. Let me zoom in a bit. So the big answer is we do have a requirement from Metro to adopt it by the end of 2022. So we're looking at all the different components done by December 2022. And let me scroll up here, zoom out a little bit so you can see the months here. So we've been kicking this, kind of been working on it behind the scenes for a number of months now, doing a lot of background work and kind of thinking about how we're going to have the community conversations. We are looking at one of the first things is already a sub-consultant working with us, another Eco Northwest is the firm's name. They're working with us to specifically look at affordable housing and ADUs or accessory dwelling units and how to encourage and how we best address those in the project. So that's an early part of the project that's going now that we've started technical work on, and some of that will then inform, and that's purposefully early in the project so it can inform the planning that we do from there. Starting here in a couple of months, we'll be getting into the actual, thinking about and talking to the community about how do the different blocks and what's in each block and the type of housing and the mix of housing in each blocks kind of lays out, and being thoughtful about that to meet the variety of needs and desires. We're also going to, again, look about that same time, look at the neighborhood commercial somewhere along Stafford Road and the feasibility of that. We have a specific consultant on board that's going to be looking at that. So as I mentioned earlier, it's not just about identifying, how many units are going where. There's a lot of effort. A big part of this is what we call public realm planning. So that's planning the trails, the streets, what the streets look like, what kind of landscape is along the streets, how it interrelates to nature, how the existing trees play into it, how other wetlands or other natural features, the canyons and such play into how we lay out the planned neighborhood. And from there, we get into some technical stuff kind of late in the project. We're going to look at the technical part of the infrastructure more and how it's being paid for, as well as actually do the updating of the actual documents that will enable this stuff to happen when it's adopted. And finally, adoption, the later part of 2022. So that's the brief of the project outline. Happy to answer any questions you have about that. I can leave this up for a moment if there's any questions.
I think the clear follow-up question is, so how long after this process is complete would you expect annexation, development, that kind of thing?
Some of it can happen pretty quick. Again, I mean, that really comes down to where the utilities are and how to fund and get the utilities in the ground that would enable development. Will really be the determinant on what happens first and how quickly. And of course, where the residential market is and other markets are at the time.
Let's take Michelle's question.
So along those same lines, I see that you're creating this plan with, let's see, it's west and south. I forgot what the other one was. I forgot my directions. Anyway, my question is, are both of those, since you're planning them together, are they going to be developed at the same time? Or do you anticipate that they will be across the street from me working on that for 5 to 10 years and then eventually coming over and doing the second piece Like, is there an order of operations there?
Dan, you want to address that, and I can add too.
Yeah, sure. So a lot of it comes back to where's utilities. So there were utilities, some utilities built out near the south portion as part of the Meridian Creek Middle School project. But to really get down to any development on 60th, there'd be, 60th would need to be improved, things like that. Utilities run down 60th, so that's quite a bit of work. And so typically what we see is you don't leapfrog, you really have to start where there are the utility connections, because it's costly to build a long stretch of utilities to go beyond where they're existing. So you'll see the areas kind of build upon where utilities are put in the ground.
Do you know where the utilities are right now? I know they have run natural gas out right on Advance Road here. That's the road that I'm right on. Is that kind of like a starting point for utilities?
No, natural gas, because natural gas is run to rural properties. We're really talking about urban level street improvements, as well as the city sewer lines, the city water lines, the city storm sewer, things like that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Wendy, let's take your question.
Thank you so much. So we bought this a little over 3 years ago, our property. When we moved in, we did not know we were going to take on so much water from the Meridian School. Like, we get all their water. So my question is, how is where the park is going to be built right across the street from us with the water issues? I mean, it's a nightmare. We've put in French drains everywhere. It's not helping. We get flooded here. So what are the plans on making that so we don't take on all the water from the school and the new park?
I can start that, Dan.
Sure.
For this master planning effort, there will be a stormwater plan component of it. And it'll be oriented to serve the development that comes in over time. The community park is, you can think of it as its own sort of individual stormwater planning, very site specific situation. So it's helpful to the city to know that you've experienced some issues with changed flow. Yeah,
Okay, I know. Yeah,
yeah.
it's awful.
And so really there, another way of saying, actually, Joe, were you finished? I'm sorry.
No, I'm all done.
Okay. Another way of really saying what Joe has said was that the master plan does look at like the key infrastructure, where the pipes are that collect it and convey it further downstream, or where it down to where it enters a stream or something. But then at the same time, each development, each property that develops has to look at how they handle stormwater on site and keep most of the stormwater on site to insert back into the ground. So
Yeah, because that's a big concern for us. So that would be a fantastic when that gets dealt with. All right, thank you.
Yep.
All right, well, let's move on to the next part of the meeting. Thank you, everybody, for your attention and your questions while we've been doing so much talking. We wanted to have a part of this meeting where we allow you all to tell us some of your own concerns, and we've already heard a number of them. So if you want to sort of talk a little bit more about them or tell us something different, that would be good too. So the three questions that we'll put out there for open discussion would be, one, sort of what's your greatest hope for this plan? What's something positive that you hope happens? Secondly, what are you concerned about? What's a worry that perhaps we can get out in front of and help fix and address during the planning process. And then finally, is there something specific about the area or maybe your property that that the team really needs to know? Hey, there's this great big 50-inch oak out here and it's a signature tree as an example, or maybe a historic site that nobody knows about. So we're going to try and do more listening than talking at this point. And think about these questions for a minute or two. And let's see if we can get somebody to talk first about kind of what are your hopes or concerns or something we need to know. Michelle, let's start with you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not afraid to go first. So my hopes is I would love to have the walkability, the bikeability, the medians that slow down traffic. Here on Advance Road, which someone else mentioned as well, people joyride specifically to come down the hill over here, and it's an accident waiting to happen. My neighbor's kid got hit going to school. Luckily, he was okay, but there's no sidewalk. There's nothing, and the bus has to pick him up and take him over to the school, which is, I mean, he should be able to walk that. My child is going to be going to that school next year. You know, hopefully I can get a bus for him, or I'm going to have to drop him off every day because I can't let him walk there. In fact, our neighbors, when their kids were younger, we let them trudge through our front yard. I'm like, please do, because I'm afraid you're going to get hit by a car. Our neighbors have lost animals on the road. And so that is one of my biggest concerns is walkability, bikeability, and slowing down the traffic over here. The city put in, the traffic light down here. I was hoping they were going to put in a traffic circle, honestly, to slow it down, because it's still, people are running that thing, not as bad as when the stop signs were there, but still I see it all the time, and it's scary. So that is my main hope, is that improves, because we would be biking more. I mean, we're kind of taking our lives into our own hands if we just want to leave from our house on our bikes. And that's kind of sad. So I guess that kind of leads into my concern. It's kind of the same thing, is I'm concerned that Advanced Road is not going to really be addressed farther. I mean, just past where we're at. It's like, I don't know if they can speed bump that area or do something to slow traffic down from that big hill that's right there. The other concerns I have, which I've already brought up, is what does affordable housing density mean? Like, I'm afraid I'm going to look out my window and there's going to be an apartment complex at the back of my property. And that's kind of, that's one of the things. And also the traffic issue, which again goes to Advanced Road improvements. As far as kind of the special things about where we're at, we do have those big trees. We've got a couple silver maples back here that are 50+ years old, and they made it through that last ice storm. It was a mess, but you know what? Those are things that we don't have anymore everywhere. And we're lucky to have them. And I'd love to see that those stay where they're at, and I think that's it.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. Thank you for that. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to add something as you think through these questions. It's helpful sometimes to think both, and we want to hear both, kind of short or medium term, like, when this is built in 5 years, this is what's important, but also think longer term, 15, 20 years, when your kids or grandkids are trying to live out here, what are hopes or concerns? So thinking both short term and longer term. So this will be an area that will take, if it's something like that, takes a while. I mean, it's not going to all be built at once. I mean, we're talking, it could be a decade or more as it's built out. So.
Okay. Mariana, hold that thought, and then we'll go to Wendy next, and then pick up with you.
Thank you. Michelle's 100% on point. My son loves to bike ride, and my daughter, we're petrified just even going to Stafford Road. I don't allow him to walk to school. He's a senior. He's getting his permit. It's petrifying for me to have him walk over there because so much speeding on Advance. There's no walkway right now from 60th all the way to Stafford. So that would be a huge improvement. that will be amazing. I can't wait to see that. Walkways will be huge for us. Yeah, and like she said, we had a gentleman that came through last spring. He was really nice. He was counting all the sequoias, I guess, in Wilsonville. And we have, I think, the second or third largest sequoia in Wilsonville.
Wow.
And yeah, I know, it's pretty cool. And we also have a redwood, huge redwood that the people that owned this before from the 1970s planted. And we love our trees. They're gorgeous. We call her majestic.
About how tall? Just estimate.
Oh God, Majesty and Majestic. Oh, I wish my husband was still here. They're huge. I would be terrible to say how tall. They're massive.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, that would be a huge access to our, a huge thing to implement into the development. I mean, they're beautiful. But yeah, like Michelle's saying, it's a big deal to make it family friendly and not overdeveloping with, we have a lot of apartments in Wilsonville, and I'm very familiar with Villebois and over by Ruth Street. It's a beautiful setup, but you don't want it to be overdeveloped with apartments and condos, because we're going to have massive traffic issues over here. It's already starting to get that way, just from the House of Dreams being put in and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably my biggest concerns, but my hope is that it's going to be, a beautiful place for all of us to live. And I'm not against developing. I just want it to be for all of us. People have acreage. There's people that, want to buy up all of this acreage and develop, 10 homes on an acre and all. It's like, that's crazy. I mean, it needs to be, a mutual agreement with everybody, and just a beautiful area to live in, to continue Wilsonville to be beautiful and not overbuilt. That's what will be amazing for me. So I'm done.
Okay. No, good thoughts.
Thank you.
Mariana, let's take yours and then go to Sparkle.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. I have a couple of questions. First of all, the ladies were talking about the issues with the sidewalks, and I totally understand how terrible it is when sidewalks, or lack of it, they're not there. And it's very difficult for kids, for families, for bike riders. So I really hope that is part of this process, the development of sidewalks and walking paths, etc. But my question is, I know that sometimes ODOT has jurisdiction over some roads. And I was wondering if in that area, is that the case with some of the streets? Or
Dan?
does the city only have jurisdiction over these roads?
Yeah.
Dan, why don't you explain the city-county
Yeah,
relationship?
So all these roads are currently Clackamas County jurisdiction.
Okay.
And so like for existing roads, if they're rebuilt, when they're rebuilt to city standards, the city and the county have a good relationship of them being handed over to the city at that time. And then all the new roads would be city roads. So the city, when it's all built out, all of the roads would be city jurisdiction.
That is great. Yes, that is a wonderful relationship to have with the county. That makes things easier to work for everyone. And the other question that I have, the concern about middle housing, whether this is cottage clusters or apartments or townhomes. I was wondering if the lady, I believe it's Michelle, her name, that spoke first, if all this could be fixed, the sidewalks, kids could be safe, speed bumps could be placed, with cottage clusters or townhomes or duplexes would still be a problem. And I was wondering if you could be more specific about the issue that would cause.
So I think short answer is sidewalks and street improvements and bikeability is a baseline requirement of all development. So it has
Yeah.
to be put in.
Exactly. But I'm saying that if all that, when all that happens, are the presence of, the development of apartments or cottage clusters still be a problem? And townhomes, duplexes, would those still be a problem for you? And I wonder why.
Are you directing that question to me, Michelle?
Yes, Michelle, yes.
So the issue is just the pure amount of people who funnel through the roads. Every person around here has 2 or 3 SUVs. Basically, every family member has one. And when you realize how much traffic it generates, even just from the development that has happened so far, I'm concerned about traffic. And when you make it even denser than that, you double the cars potentially. And I mean, there's nowhere to park. I mean, even if you go into like Villebois and you see people, they don't even have a driveway. They've got an alley and then they have to park in their garage. And there's hardly any parking for those people either. The streets are very narrow. So you're running into areas where you can't even park on the road because of fire truck concerns and access for emergency vehicles. It's that whole thing. It's adding all of that traffic. And I actually don't have a problem with duplexes. I've seen them built in very well into the new neighborhoods that are over here. And I think that's a really great way to incorporate some lower cost housing and cottages as well. And even townhomes like in Villebois, I think they're super nice. I mean, we went and actually looked at one to purchase. But again, it's got to go with those road improvements. And that's a huge concern, I think, of all of us in this area, is how do we match that density and that population of like SUVs, basically? How do we cram that over here and make it so everyone can still use everything in a comfortable way that makes sense and that isn't overburdened?
Thank you so much, Michelle. That makes a lot of sense.
No problem.
Let's keep rolling. Sparkle, you're next, and then we'll go to Joseph.
Yeah, well, I think I have the solution to the worries that these people have talked about. It's power lines. You can't live under the power lines, but you can park, you can drive, you can garden, you can play tennis, you can walk, you can do all the stuff under the power lines. And since about 30% of my property is power lines, and I've never seen a plan that did anything except ignore them. And I've always wondered, why don't they run townhouses along the power lines and give them a backyard? There you have high density and backyards. Everybody wins. And there's still plenty of room for the roads, and you can park all over the place there. If you have any commercial, why doesn't the commercial park under the power lines? It's always seemed to me like a waste of something that you can't do everything under the power lines, but there are things that you can do. And one of them is park. And I'd like to see somebody put the roads and the parking and all that kind of stuff under the power lines and save the usable property for living.
Great.
Can I ask a question of that person? So how does that work though with the developers? Are they gonna, and maybe this goes to you too, Joe, is does that all the overhead power lines become buried? Like, does that all go away?
Yeah, and I think Sparkle's talking about the large BPA power lines, which are a permanent easement. It's a substantial amount of land, which is an opportunity. I mean, it's acres of land from those big, large power lines that take transmission from one city to another. The local power lines are put underground as part of development. So like we'd expect most of the power lines, sometimes they're too high voltage to put underground, but typically like the power lines along Advance or 60th would go underground with development. But really what Sparkle was referring to are the large swaths of land under the large kind of inner city power lines.
Oh, that makes sense. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah. And I'll just add to that she's exactly right that there's really quite a list of creative things that you can do under the power lines that are basically open space uses. So trails, community gardens, recreational space, a parking lot that serves adjacent development. All of those are good candidates. Sparkle, we started talking. Were there any other points you wanted to share?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Thanks for those. Joseph, let's go over to you.
Okay, I'm here with my father, Khalil, and actually we had a two-part question, and Sparkle raised the first part of that, which was the power lines, because quite a bit of our property also involves those power lines, and we were hoping that that doesn't go to waste, that that there could be a good use for that, whether it's parking or a park or something to that effect. So I mean, I guess that's one of our hopes, is that a good use is found for that. So hopefully in the planning, you guys will spend some time to try and find a good solution that would be good for the community. And then the second part, I'll let my dad talk here.
The other part is that you touched on that little strip, perhaps little strip mall. I think that is so, it's good to have something like that, because you're going to have so many homes and so many people around that. Instead of people driving 2, 3, 4 miles to get a cup of coffee or a deli or a sandwich, it would be nice to have something would be most convenient for the people to walk to it or bike to it. I think it would be an extra flavor for the development to have something like that.
Great, thank you. Wendy, hold that thought for a moment. Is there anybody who hasn't spoken yet that would like to share an idea, the questions we have up, or maybe something else?
We do have a question in the Q&A that I can answer.
Oh, let's go there. So somebody read the question. And
Yeah, so the question is, will all new housing have homeowners associations? How is this determined? And this is from Kent Regard. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. My apologies. So it's not a strict requirement of the city to have a homeowners association. We do see typically in all recent development that they do occur, primarily because there tends to be a shared amenity of some sort, be it even stormwater planters or small parks, or just a desire to maintain a uniform level of property maintenance, that developers do elect to start an HOA. And so really that is developed, determined by the developer. And we tend to see, I mean, virtually, I can't think of any recent larger development where they did not institute an HOA. But that's not a city requirement. That's something that, unless there's a specific feature that needs to be maintained by some sort of organization, it's not a requirement, but most developers do it.
okay, Wendy, over to you.
Yeah, hey, so I think there's a good ideas for about the parking and the strip mall or whatever, with the other owners. My concern would be, what about health issues? Because I know when I drive under those electrical, things, they make my head buzz. I mean, they're super loud. So would you guys be willing to look into the health concerns of us? I mean, it's not that I'm against it. I just think it's odd that when I drive under any of those kind of things, you hear this buzzing. It's very, just a question.
Mm-hmm. Dan, anything you want to add on that? I mean, we can reach out to
Yeah,
BPA and PGE. They have a lot of experience with it.
Yeah, certainly is something that, I mean, BPA would be engaged as we plan that area in their easement. Bonneville Power Administration, long-term, they do own that easement, and it's had a necessary infrastructure. And I mean, the federal government has an easement, and so the idea of anything really changing about their existence is probably not going to happen. But being thoughtful of, okay, understanding what are appropriate uses to put under them from a safety standpoint. Certainly, as we look at creative use, as we've spoken about tonight, we'd want to engage them to, you know, the experts in terms of what would be appropriate uses under there.
Okay. We're in the last couple of minutes. We're running right on time. Good job, everybody. But I do want to kind of put out the last call here for any comments or feedback that anybody has.
I have one quick question. If, you know, sometimes it's difficult for all neighbors to come together and agree upon something. And I'm thinking about what was discussed earlier about, you know, if we're going to annex something, it sounded like it's up to the property owners to decide when their piece of property is annexed. And then I'm thinking, well, so how would you develop a community when you have a whole community planned out? And I mean, you know, Snells want to stick around a while, right? Maybe the Perez's don't. And so what does that mean? What does that look like?
I can share from other communities and other developments that I've seen over time that when you have multiple property owners like we have in Frog Pond area, the reality is that some of those owners will want to develop sooner than others. And so you do have some properties that would be the original house, maybe a little acreage around it, and so on for some years while there's adjacent development happening nearby on other properties. So there is different timing. I think it's really just a reality that we've seen in other areas. But the constant is that there's a plan and there is knowledge by everybody for when owners do decide what the outcome will be. And so it knits together over time. I don't know if that answers your question, but it just shares a little experience from other areas.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and from a technical point, Tim, I mean, when one property develops, we certainly, I mean, and there's standards that we really look carefully and thoughtfully about how does it support any future development of adjacent properties. And sometimes we've heard even criticisms that, well, why are you building that street stub out? We're not going to move for 20 years. But, you know, we still build the street stubbed out to the property line to enable development kind of consistent with the plan. Sometimes streets need to be adjusted one way or the other based on property lines. And that's kept in mind even as we lay out the streets to knowing that that development typically does occur along based on current ownership. And so that's taken into consideration as we plan infrastructure and streets.
Okay, thank you.
Dan, I think we've reached the point where we can go to you for sort of next steps and wrap up.
Sure, thank you. Thank you, Joe. So I wanted to, first of all, just a great thank you. It's good to see everyone come out this evening and look forward to continuing to engage with you over the next year plus as we work on this and have some constructive conversations about how to make this a great neighborhood as it changes over a number of years. I encourage you to keep your eye on Let's Talk Wilsonville. That's a great way that we share information. Keep and look at our planning commission schedule. Some of these planning commission meetings that will be coming up will be kind of real technical, where we'll be really briefing some technical components with the planning commission. Another role of the planning commission is also as what we call our committee for citizen involvement. So really they are part of the role is also just to listen and to understand what the community is saying. And so we'll make sure this group, along with others, are aware of when those really listening sessions are, where you can come share, because you'll have different thoughts and feelings as this progresses, and you get more information about these different components of the project. We are continuing with other community meetings coming up. We're meeting with owners in Frog Pond West, who will be the immediate neighbors to this project here next week, as well as other neighboring homeowners associations and the interested public in general coming up here in early October. Then in October, we'll be kind of doing a public kickoff and briefing both the Planning Commission and City Council. And both those groups are really interested in seeing the success of this project. It builds on a lot of work that they've been doing for many years and lays the groundwork for other work that we'll be doing beyond this master planning effort. So, and again, there's Georgia and my contact information. We look forward to these conversations, and there's a lot of support to do this project right. And we appreciate your continued support in doing that as well. So thank you for your time this evening. And I know we're at time, so we'll go ahead and end, but that doesn't mean you can't reach out to Georgia or I with additional questions, or as you sleep on it, you wake up tomorrow with questions, feel free to reach out to us or over the weekend or anytime over the coming months. So thank you very much. And thank you to the project team that joined us tonight as well.
Thanks, everybody. See you
Thank
soon.
you.
All right. Looks like MJ is still connected. Oh, there we go. All right. So far, so good. You guys feel good about it? Nice, friendly conversation, I thought.
I thought so too, even with the concerns that were voiced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, more than anything, I was glad that we got the number engaged and that they are informed, they are engaged. I mean, it wasn't all the property owners, but it was a good group.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Some of which we know more than others. Some that are good personal friends, others that are former neighbors to me at other house. I know Wendy and Sam quite well. So
Well, that must be such an odd experience, Dan.
yeah, and I also know Tim and Cynthia Perez very well.
Okay.
They're good friends. So
Good.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think for the Frog Pond West folks next week, we ought to put the timeline graphic in as a slide. And then